At my mom's retirement barbecue, I gave her the keys to a used car, but she shrugged and said, "Your brother is still better than you, even though his gift was cheaper." Then my brother shouted, "It must be hard to be a loser who no one loves." I just smiled and drove away. 2 months later, I took a step that destroyed everything for them. Now mom is begging for a family reunion. My brother is yelling, "Please don't do this." I didn't go to that barbecue for revenge. I went because it was my mom's retirement party, and I still believed that somehow hard work would pay off. I'd been saving for over a year, working weekends at the auto shop and delivering groceries at night just to scrape together enough. Not for me. For her. The car was a 1973 Mustang, candy apple red, freshly restored by my own hands. Every time she saw one on the street, she would point it out and say, "That's what I wanted when I was young. But I'll never get one. I have kids instead." So I bought her the damn car. Nobody noticed when I pulled up in it. I even parked it a little closer to the street, thinking someone would say something, but they were all too busy loading their paper plates with potato salad and cheap hamburgers. It was one of those sweltering Sundays where everyone is sweating but pretending to be having fun. My cousin Chloe was already drunk, Uncle Rick was arguing about politics, and my brother Marcus was nowhere to be seen. He finally came out of the house holding 3 flowers. Just flowers. From our mother's own garden. He probably hadn't even cut them properly. And yet when he handed them to her, the reaction was like he'd flown to Paris and brought back a bouquet from the Louvre or something. My mother actually gasped. Called him her angel. Her thoughtful, loving boy. Then she looked around and said how lucky she was to have a son like Marcus. Everyone clapped. I felt like I was watching a satire, and I was the only one who got the joke. I waited for things to settle down, and then casually mentioned that the car in the driveway, yes, that was hers. I had restored it. I even had the title in her name, all processed and signed. There was a strange silence. A kind of confused pause, like they were all trying to process it. Then my mother said, not even sarcastically, just completely uninterested, "Your brother is still better than you, even though his gift is cheaper." There was no laughter after that. No smirk. She just turned to someone else and started talking about pension plans or whatever. Marcus didn't miss the moment. He raised his beer and yelled across the yard, "Must be hard being a loser that nobody loves." And that was it. I didn't say anything. Didn't try to explain myself. I just nodded, smiled a little, and got back in the car. The one I had just given her. I drove it home and parked it in my garage. I sat there in silence for a while. Then I went inside and deleted every photo I had taken of the car during the restoration process. I didn't want them to have any memory of it. 2 months passed. We barely spoke. Except when Mom needed help moving something, or when Marcus had a little request related to his latest startup project. This time he needed 15 grand. He said it was his big break, that this investment would change everything. I read his pitch deck. Half of it was plagiarized from some tech blog, and the rest was overblown nonsense. I didn't respond right away. Let them think about it. Let them wonder. Meanwhile, I was already on the phone, quietly pulling some strings I'd kept in reserve. See the money he needed? I had it. But not for him. And when I finally made my move, it would tear down everything they'd built on my back. But first, I was going to enjoy watching them sweat. After the barbecue, I didn't block their numbers. I didn't throw a fit or go on some dramatic rant about being unappreciated. I let it all sit. Let it breathe. Let them think I'd just taken the insult and walked away like a kicked dog. For 2 months, I kept things cordial. I responded with short answers when Mom texted, always polite. I didn't bring up the car, and she didn't either. She acted as if it had never happened. Marcus reached out through her, as he always did. At first it was small stuff. A question about a budgeting app, a vague comment about an exciting new project. I ignored it. Then Mom started mentioning that Marcus was on the verge of something big. She made it sound like he was about to take a billion-dollar company public out of her basement. She asked me if I could maybe help him. Not much. Just 15 grand to help him bridge a critical phase. Said it could change everything for him. That this time he meant it. She actually said that. This time he's serious. So I told her I'd think about it. What she didn't know was that Marcus had already sent me the pitch deck. A 17-slide PowerPoint full of buzzwords, fake charts, and mock-ups he hadn't even designed. I recognized one of them from a free templates site. He had no team, no product, not even a working prototype. Just a dream and the assumption that someone else would foot the bill for it. But the thing that pushed me over the edge wasn't the deck. It was the spreadsheet he included with his projected revenue. One line stood out at $15,000, angel investment, marked as confirmed by Henry W. Like it was a done deal. Like I was just another wallet he could claim before I even said yes. I didn't respond. I forwarded the card to a guy named Alan. We met a few months earlier through a friend who ran a chain of auto shops. Alan was a private investor, smart, ruthless, and allergic to BS. He was already in talks with Marcus after Mom put them together through her old work buddy. I didn't even have to say much. I just sent him the deck and told him to take a second look. Alan called me the next day and said, "Thanks for saving me from setting my money on fire." He backed out of the deal that afternoon. Marcus didn't know it was me. Then I contacted Riley, the guy who had been Marcus's partner on the project back in college. Riley was a developer of real talent. I asked him if he was still involved, and he said, "Not unless Marcus actually pays me." I told him he probably wouldn't. I forwarded him the same messages Marcus had sent me, promising payment. Next week, next week, next week. Always next week. Riley texted me. I'm done with him. That same night, Marcus came to my apartment. It was the first time he'd ever shown up without warning. No smile, no fake charm, no pretending to want to hang out. Just stood in my doorway like I owed him a favor. He said he knew what I'd done. That I'd screwed up the investment. That I was jealous. He said Mom told him I'd been acting weird lately, like I needed to prove something. Then he laughed and said, "You know why she'll always love me more? Because you try too hard. I don't even have to do anything." I didn't say anything. I just stood there and listened. He added, "You're just bitter because no one needs you anymore." I opened the door wider. He didn't fight it. He just walked out, muttering something about how I'd regret it. A week later I got a text from Mom. She said she wanted to reunite the family. That it was time for us to heal and be together. That she missed the way things used to be. She invited me to a reunion dinner. She said all the relatives would be there. Even Dad, who usually avoided these things unless he was tricked into it. I said yes. I already knew what it was. A performance. A staged apology followed by a guilt trip. She wanted the family to see how difficult I was. To make herself and Marcus look like the victims. I could hear her rehearse lines. "We just want peace. Henry's been so distant. It's a shame, really." I was going to show up, all right. But I wasn't going to play the part they had written for me. Because the game had already changed. The reunion was at my parents' house, just like always. The same folding chairs in the backyard, the same plastic tablecloths flapping in the breeze, the same tray of overcooked lasagna. I pulled up in the Mustang not for show, but because I wanted her to see it again. To remember. It was parked just close enough to the house that she couldn't pretend not to notice. She didn't say a word. Everyone was already there, cousins, uncles, second cousins I barely recognized. My dad was in the corner drinking a beer like he couldn't believe he'd agreed to come. The moment I stepped onto the porch, I could feel it. The tension beneath the smiles. As if everyone had been told that I was the difficult one. The problem child who needed to be brought back into the fold. Mom greeted me as if nothing had happened. Gave me a plate, pointed me to the buffet. I played along. Smiled. Said hello. Even shook Marcus' hand when he offered it. He was wearing a new watch, probably another gift from her. His startup was officially dead, though no one else here seemed to know that. Or they pretended not to. About halfway through dinner, Mom stood up and clinked her glass with a spoon. She smiled at me as if we were on a talk show. Then she said, "I just want to say how happy I am that we're all together again. Families go through hard times. But we always come back together. That's all that matters. And I'm especially happy that Henry could make it tonight. I know he's been going through some things." There it was. The script. She looked around as if expecting applause. Marcus chimed in next. Loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yeah, glad you're here, man. No hard feelings. Water under the bridge, right?" Then he laughed. like we were all in on the joke. My dad looked up from his plate, already annoyed. He mumbled something to himself and reached for another beer. That's when I stood up. I didn't raise my voice or act angry. I just said it clearly so everyone could hear. I am not here to make peace. I'm here to ask for my $15,000 back. You could hear a pin drop. Mom blinked as if I'd slapped her. Excuse me? I repeated. 15,000. I'm done pretending it was a gift. I have the texts, the emails, the agreements. If you don't give it back, I'm going through legal channels. Marcus stood up like he was going to explode. You're seriously doing this here? In front of everyone? I am. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" And a few people started asking questions. Dad didn't say a word. He just sat back and watched. Mom tried to smooth things over. This isn't the time or the place. We can talk about it later, Henry. No. We won't. You had 2 months. Then something happened that I hadn't expected. My Uncle Dave, who had been silent all night, stood up and said, "Honestly, I don't blame him. You two have been taking advantage of him long enough." More murmurs. My cousin Jen nodded. Even Aunt Marcy, who always took Mom's side, looked uncomfortable. Marcus tried to save it, started ranting about how I was vindictive, how I didn't understand what startups were like. But the damage was done. People were turning. I looked at her differently now. Mom just sat there, her smile frozen and useless. That night I got 5 texts from relatives. They all said variations of the same thing. "Good for you, you had every right, about time someone said something." A week later, I filed a lawsuit. Now Mom won't talk to me. Marcus yells at anyone who will listen. The family group chat has been quiet ever since. But Dad? He called the next morning and simply said, "I told her this would happen. Let me know if you need anything." The lawsuit wasn't just symbolic. I meant every line of that document. Breach of contract. Misrepresentation. Verbal breach of contract. I had it all: texts, emails, even a voicemail from Mom saying, "We just need a little help, and of course we'll pay you back when Marcus gets his funding." That was the line that made my lawyer raise an eyebrow and say, "They're not going to like that." No, they didn't. Within 3 days of the filing, Mom sent me a long email. No apology. No remorse. Just paragraphs about how this would tear the family apart, how I was overreacting, how I should show some compassion for my brother who didn't have it as easy as you. As easy as me. The kid who worked 2 jobs to put himself through community college while Marcus played League of Legends in the basement and skipped classes until they kicked him out. I read the email twice. Didn't respond. Then the real damage began. Marcus posted a long, dramatic Facebook status about betrayal and greed, tagging no one but making it clear who the villain was. A few of his friends chimed in, people I hadn't seen in years, saying things like, "Families should stick together," and "sad to see someone turn on themselves." I didn't get involved. But the people who knew the whole story? They started commenting too. Quietly at first. One of my cousins posted, "Wasn't Henry the one who paid for your last business trip?" Another said, "I remember when Henry loaned you money for that VR idea back in 2022. Did he ever get it back?" Then came the messages. Private ones, from people I hadn't spoken to since high school. People who'd had their own run-ins with Marcus. Some told me he owed them money. One guy said Marcus cheated him out of a graphic design job and never paid him. It was like once the door opened, everyone had a story to tell. Meanwhile, Mom began damage control. She invited some relatives over for lunch. Just casually. Just to catch up. My Aunt Carol was there and later told me the whole thing was a disaster. Mom tried to explain that I was going through a phase, and Marcus just needed time to get back on his feet. But when Carol asked why I filed a lawsuit instead of just asking for the money back, Mom actually said, "He wanted attention." Carol didn't take that well. I began to see something I hadn't seen before. There was a quiet resentment in the family that had been brewing for years. The favoritism. The manipulation. The unspoken expectation that Marcus could fail again and again, and someone, usually me, would be there to cushion the fall. Not anymore. The funniest part? Marcus still thought he could make it work. 3 days before the court date, he texted me. "Let's talk. Just us. We can work something out." I didn't reply. So on the day of the court appearance, he showed up in a wrinkled button-down and asked my lawyer if he could talk to me before things got official. I told my lawyer to tell him no. We didn't settle. We went through with it. And when the judge asked Marcus if he had any written proof that the money was a gift, all he could say was, "It was understood." It wasn't. The court ruled in my favor. He had 30 days to pay me back. Mom hadn't spoken to me since the decision. But then, 2 nights later, I got a voicemail from her. You could hear the tears in her voice. She said, "Please, let's just fix this. Don't destroy what's left of this family." And right behind her, you could hear Marcus screaming, "Please don't do this." I didn't call her back. I listened to the voicemail once, maybe twice. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because I wanted to make sure I heard what I thought I heard. The panic wasn't about losing a son. It was about losing the story. Losing control of the version of events she'd spent decades building. The one where I was the angry one, the complicated one. The one where Marcus was just a little lost, but lovable. No one was buying it anymore. The story had begun to seep into the rest of the family. Quietly, casually. My Aunt Carol told my dad she couldn't believe how far Mom was willing to go to protect Marcus. Then Aunt Lisa called me just to say she was proud of how I handled everything. "You kept your cool," she said. "That's what made it work." Even Uncle Rick, who once told me that going to court was worse than going to prison, sent me a message saying, "I never liked the way they treated you. Glad somebody finally said enough." I knew Mom had something else planned. She always had another number in her. And I was right. 2 weeks after the verdict, I got an invitation. Another dinner. Smaller this time. Just immediate family. The card said, "Family Healing Night." I almost laughed when I opened it. But I went. More out of curiosity than anything else. I wasn't angry anymore. I'd won. But I wanted to see what they'd try next. When I arrived, the house was unusually clean. Candles, fresh flowers, real silver. They had made an effort. Mom was smiling. Marcus had shaved. Even my father wore a shirt without a hole in it. Dinner began with the usual awkward silence. Then Mom began her speech. About forgiveness. About how families make mistakes. About how people sometimes lash out when they're hurt. She said she knew things had gone too far, but deep down, we all love each other. Marcus jumped in on cue. He said he was sorry if I was hurt by anything. Not that he was sorry, just that I felt hurt. It was more of a script than a real apology. The same performance. Only this time it was obvious. Then Mom said the line I'd been waiting for. "We just want to move on now. A clean slate. A fresh start. No more court stuff, no more money talk." I waited a few seconds before saying anything. Then I looked at both of them and said, "Sure. Just wire the 15 grand tonight, and we're good." Marcus jumped as if someone had thrown cold water on him. Mom blinked. "We just said." "You said?" I listened. Then I stood up and pulled something out of my pocket. A printed spreadsheet. A list of every payment I had made to support Marcus over the past 4 years. Rent. Tech equipment. Food. Flights. Everything. Then I dropped a folder, the official decision of the court. Signed. Stamped. I turned to Dad. "I just want to be clear. I'm not mad at you. I know you've had to live with all this longer than I have." He didn't say much. Just nodded. I could see he wanted to say more, but the man had been stuck in this place for too long. Still, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Relief. I left before dessert. The next day I got a message from Carol. "So I hear the show didn't end the way you wanted it to last night." No. It didn't. About a week after that disaster of a family dinner, I met my dad for lunch at that old diner we used to go to after Sunday errands. It still had those booths with the faux leather peeling off the corners and a jukebox that played whatever it wanted. It was the kind of place where the silverware always felt slightly greasy, but the food was solid and the coffee didn't taste like it came from a church basement. Dad was already there when I showed up, nursing a half-empty cup and flipping through a local paper that hadn't been redesigned since 1998. He grunted something that passed for a greeting and slid me the menu, as if he didn't already know I was going to order the meatloaf. We didn't dive into anything deep. Just talked normally. Baseball, yard work, gas prices, how stupid it was that our neighbor still couldn't figure out how to park between the lines. The usual safe topics. But after we finished eating, I told him I was thinking about writing the whole story. About what happened with Mom and Marcus. Maybe online. Maybe on Reddit. Somewhere where people could see it for what it was. Not out of pity, not to vent. Just to say, this is real. This happens. He gave this short laugh, shook his head and said, "Go ahead. Write the damn thing. Not like there are other wives and sons out there as inadequate as mine. Present company excluded." And I laughed because that was him. That was the closest he ever came to saying, "I get it. I see you. You were right." After that, things settled down. Marcus started making his payments, because legally he had no choice. He whined about it, tried to get extensions, even claimed at one point that he'd found another investor who would cover it for him if I let it go. I didn't respond. Finally, he sold his new iPad, his little drone, and whatever else he'd bought with imaginary future startup profits. I didn't feel bad for him. Mom stayed silent. She didn't call, she didn't email, she didn't send one of her vague apology texts in the form of a family update. She stopped inviting me to the holidays altogether. Not even a guilt trip this time. Just silence. At first it bothered me more than I thought it would. But that passed. And when it did, it felt like I was finally dropping something heavy I didn't even know I was carrying. The money came over 2.5 months. Small chunks, broken payments. Each time I got one, I put it in a separate account. I didn't touch a dime. And when the full $15,000 was there, I donated every dollar to a local program that helps kids from low-income neighborhoods learn real trades mechanics, plumbing, HVAC, welding. People who don't get bailed out when they screw up. People who build things instead of sitting around dreaming that someone else will make it happen. I never told my father what I did with the money. Never told anybody in the family. Didn't have to. I knew. A few relatives still reach out. Carol sends me photos of family dinners I am no longer invited to. Jen texts now and then about how her kids are doing. I get the feeling that some of them are quietly relieved. Like me, stepping out of the circle made them feel like maybe they could, too, in their own way. Marcus and Mom haven't spoken to me since the day of the verdict. The last I heard, Marcus was trying to pitch another app idea to a friend of a friend. This one was about revolutionizing personal time management. He got laughed out of the meeting. Mom still acts like he's going to change the world. Dad and I? We're fine. We get together for lunch about once a month. No big speeches. No drama. Just meatloaf and weather talk and the occasional sarcastic jab about Mom's latest breakdown. He never says it outright, but I think he's proud that I didn't fall over this time. Looking back, it wasn't just about the money. It was about finally stepping out of the role they'd assigned me. The reliable one. The fixer. The one who could be insulted, used, and still show up smiling. I don't show up anymore. Not for them. And you know what? It's quiet. It's peaceful. There's room in my life now for things that really matter. I told this story because someone out there is probably still hoping that their family will wake up one day and see them. Really see them. I hate to say it, but some of them never will. And the second you stop living for that moment, everything else starts. So yeah, I wrote it. And I don't regret a single thing. Update about Mom. It's been a few months since everything went down, the lawsuit, the dinner, the voicemail with Marcus yelling in the background. I thought it was over. But yeah, I should have known better. First, she sent a group text with some cheesy quote about family always finds its way back, followed by a sun emoji. No one responded. Then she started making her rounds. Visiting relatives she hadn't talked to in forever, showing up with pies and acting like she was just a sweet, misunderstood mom trying to reconnect. According to my cousin Jen, she even tried to get Jen's husband, who works at a local paper, to write some human interest story about family healing. He said no. Eventually, she emailed me directly. Said she wanted to talk, start over, make things right. No real apology, just vague lines about misunderstandings and missing her son. I didn't reply. So she sent another one, this time blaming me. Said I was the reason the family's still divided. That I was choosing pride over peace. I replied to that one. Told her I'm not angry, just done. Told her I'm not interested in pretending none of it happened. That it's not pride, it's peace. She hasn't responded since. Last I heard, she's still working the circuit. Sending cards. dropping by people's houses, smiling through it all, still trying to rewrite the story without changing the ending. I don't expect her to stop. But I also don't need her to anymore.